This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, October 16th, 2023. Case file number 1307, written by Teton Hiker, A Mother's Celestial Instinct. I was a young mother with two kids about 8-month and 3-month old. We lived in Pittsburgh in an old Victorian home, very common there. We had just come home from a long Easter Sunday at my brother-in-law's. The kids were tired and we needed to get up early for work and daycare, so we were hurrying to unload the car and get them into bed. I ran upstairs and got the baby down in her crib. My husband was unloading and parking the car and so on. When I returned to get my son to put him to bed next, for reasons I can't explain, instead of taking him upstairs, I just walked over and turned on the TV in the living room and asked him if he wanted to watch it for a while with mommy. Peter Pan was playing that night, the old one with Mary Martin, so he happily snuggled with me on the couch in the dark living room watching the show. My husband came in and asked me what in the world I was doing. Why had I turned on the TV when we needed to get him to bed? I really couldn't explain my impulse and I just told him not to worry about it. I'd get him down in a little while, and we kept watching TV. As time went by, my husband got more and more concerned about how late it was getting and why I wouldn't put our son to bed. He kept asking me to turn off the TV and take him upstairs. The more upset he got, the more stubborn I became about not taking him upstairs. I knew this made no sense as we both knew he needed to go to sleep. We were usually very strict about bedtime, and we were way past our sons. Plus, we rarely let the kids watch TV anyways. So my husband was right to be upset with me, as I was behaving very uncharacteristically. But in spite of his pleading with me, I just wouldn't budge. It was baffling for me as well as my husband. It was like part of me knew he was totally right, and the other part of me was helpless to explain why I was behaving so oddly and was so determined to keep him downstairs and not take him upstairs. Just as my husband started to get really frustrated with me, we heard a huge crash upstairs. We looked at each other and both ran to the stairs and saw what looked like a white cloud roiling at the top of the stairs and starting to come down the stairs. We both thought something had happened in the baby's room, like her crib had collapsed or something large had fallen in her room. So we raced upstairs and found she was fine, still asleep and nothing in her room was disturbed. But in my son's room, we saw a cloud of white dust still coming out of the door. We looked inside and saw that his entire plastic ceiling had collapsed. Only wooden lath remained, and big, heavy chunks of thick plaster had fallen all over his bed. It was covered. One big piece was lying on his pillow, right where his head would have been if we had put him to bed when we got home. He would have most likely been killed, or very seriously injured. But instead, he was downstairs watching Peter Pan and Wendy. To this day, I can't explain why I turned on the TV or refused to put my son to bed as expected, or why I became more and more stubborn as my husband begged me to stop the madness and get back on track. There was a very strong force in me at the time that I really couldn't override, even though I knew that what I was doing made no logical sense. But whatever it was, it saved my son's life. And my husband and I were both extremely thankful. Nothing like that has ever happened to me since then. My son is now 38 with 2 young sons of his own. Bonus file written by Oh Yeah Throw It Away, Close Call with the Hellhound. Was a pizza driver for a while back in college. Did a delivery out to the semi-country area late at night. This was before smartphones, Waze and all that. Of course, the road had no streetlights, so the only light came from the people's porch lights, my car's headlights, and the full moon. Finally found the right house and delivered the pizza to the sweet old lady that lived there. But when I turned around to walk back to my car, I couldn't help but instantly stop. There was a strange sensation that I wasn't alone. I was being watched, but I looked around and didn't see anything. Of course, it was dark as hell, so who knows? I slowly moved towards my car, and the feeling didn't go away. It only intensified. It was like I was being watched before, but now I was being hunted or something. I looked around and still couldn't see anything. So I shrugged, figured I was imagining things, and opened my car door when suddenly I heard a clicking sound, like something was tapping the pavement and the road really fast. I hopped into my car and barely got the door shut when this giant, Cujo kind of evil dog jumped at the driver window. He was growling and you could just tell that he wanted a piece of me in a big way. He had drool coming off his mouth. His breath fogged the window and it was like I could feel the reverb of his growling in my chest through the window. It was only after the fact that I realized how close I came to getting the crap mauled out of me or possibly killed by some crazy bloodthirsty dog. Half the drivers had heard where I went for the delivery, and they asked me about the dog. Turns out they'd seen him before, but nobody thought to warn me about it. Case file number 1308, written by Ether Gorilla, the Eerie Tall Man. I was 17, and the oldest of 4, and lived on the far end of the house next to the garage. I liked it over there because it was quiet and dark, and I had space away from everyone else. When I slept at night, I'd occasionally leave my door half open to let the light from the laundry room shine a light into my own room. Kind of like a nightlight. One night, I did exactly that around 10 p.m. and cozied up into bed. From the orientation of my bed, I would actually face the door laying down, and there was no other way in or out of my room. I hadn't quite closed my eyes yet, when my bedroom door slammed closed. I didn't think much of it. I actually thought my brother was playing a prank on me. At this point, I should say that when the door is closed, I could see absolutely nothing in my bedroom at all, and this was before cell phones, so I couldn't exactly shine anything to see what was going on. I said something like, "Not funny, Eric," thinking that he was on the other side of the door playing as a prank. As soon as I finished saying that, I heard loud crinkling of paper. If you grew up a few decades ago, it's the same type of thick paper that you used to get from grocery store bags before they switched to plastic. You know how if something is loud enough in a closed space, you can kind of triangulate exactly where it's coming from? It was just like that in the center of my room. It lasted about 4 to 5 seconds. Now, I'm starting to sweat bullets and kind of praying that it's my brother just really committed to a joke. About 15 to 30 seconds pass of dead silence, and I muster up the courage to jump to my feet, rush to the light and flip it on. There was absolutely nothing on my bedroom floor that could have made that sound. I checked under my bed and in the closet for Eric, and nothing. I marched out to the other side of the house, and all my siblings were asleep in their beds. I asked everyone the following morning if they had closed my door, and none had. Could never quite explain what happened, but several other eerie things happened at the house over the next few years, the most eerie of which was to my sister, who complained of the tall man that would visit her at night through the walls. Gives me goosebumps typing it out even 20 years later. Bonus file written by MC Such and Such. My dog detected something beyond our world. Many years ago, when my now 28-year-old daughter was still an infant, me, her, and our dog were at the apartment we were living in at the time. My wife was at work. I was sitting on the couch watching TV. My daughter was asleep on a blanket pallet on the floor, and the dog, a German Shepherd/Wolf hybrid mix, was about 10 feet away laying in the doorway between our kitchen and the living room area. At any rate, I was watching whatever it was that I was watching when all of a sudden Thor, our dog, starts with this low-level guttural growling. I figured that he had heard someone in another apartment or walking by through the parking lot and didn't think much of it. A few seconds pass. I notice that it's getting louder, that he has lifted his head up off his paws, his ears were perked, and he's looking up at the ceiling over where my daughter was laying. I look up, don't see anything, tell him to knock it off. Right after I tell him to knock it off, he jumps up, starts circling my sleeping daughter, literally walking around the pallet she's laying on, and growling more and more intensely, even stopping once and outright snarling and snapping his teeth, all while staring up at the ceiling. After about 2 minutes of this, and me having no clue on what to do since I can't see anything, and I do not want to reach out for my daughter with him circling her like that, he laid down next to my daughter, rested his head on her back, and stayed there for almost an hour, still intently staring up at the ceiling and occasionally growling. To this day, I have no idea what the hell was going on or what he saw or sensed, but it was extremely creepy to me. Bonus file written by Gino T-Rex. Postcards and Poltergeists. I used to work as an assistant in an old mansion that was converted into an art museum in New England. The basement and old kitchen quarters were turned into the museum shop, with back wings being more smaller galleries. The servant's staircase opened to a very narrow hallway that led towards the back room of the basement, or to the front of the shop, all beneath ground level. The stairs were locked from everyone except staff, and the only way to the basement was to enter from the outside courtyard through a door that was right beside the shop counter. In front of the counter was an old TV mounted in the upper corner that showed security cameras to the back galleries, but the camera switched only when motion was detected in the area. It's a late winter night. I am staying up late doing homework while the owners are in New York. The only other person in the building should be the house manager, who I know is working on the 4th floor. I am hanging out at the shop counter in the basement when I hear some noise in the back galleries. I assume it's a patron who is making their way out, but no one comes out from the hallway. So I call down to the back that the museum is closed, and I'd be happy to show them out the back way. No answer. But now the security camera starts switching to different empty galleries. Only slightly on edge, I pick up the phone to call up to my manager when, on the opposite side of the shop counter, a revolving card stand full of classic postcards starts slowly turning. I think the look on my face is more surprising than anything else. It's a heavy, old stand, and it takes some force to get it going. But when the turning of the stand abruptly stopped and began going the other direction, I noped right out of there. Case file number 1309, written by Volpes Volpex, The Terrifying Storm That Warped Time. I lived in a safe town, so when I was young, I could freely go out and play all day as long as I came home by dark or by the time the streetlights came on. It was summer, so it was probably close to 9 p.m. when I came home. Anyways, I left in the morning to hang out with a few friends at a park in the north side of town. Rode our bikes, got candy at Casey's, a gas station popular in the Midwest, just hung out and nothing exciting. Midday approached and we were hungry. We go to someone's house and eat, and by then a storm rolls in. In the summer, you know how fast and dark a storm can come in, but it just had a different energy to it, like it was going to be a terrible storm. My parents' friend basically told us to stay there for a few more hours to let the storm pass or go home, because it looked pretty bad out. I passed on that offer. They had like 7 of their own kids, plus like 5 or 6 of us. Screw that. So I got on my bike and took the long way home, through the south side and down towards the very southern tip of town where the public school, a creek, and the less loved park in town was. It's pretty to drive through, and the storm really set the mood. After that, nothing. I wake up in the grass and it's dark. It's raining like hell, wind whipping hard as crap. I'm soaked and freezing, so cold I can barely stand up and grab my bike that was next to me. I wasn't cut up like I had fallen off and bonked my head. I feel totally fine, besides the bone chill I had going on. My bike is fine, just wet. My shoes weren't even dirty. All my clothes were intact and just wet, not even muddy considering I was lying on the grass. After the shock, I got up and went home, getting pelted by cold rain and tiny bits of hail. How I didn't wake up from the storm really scares me the most because it was a crazy thunderstorm, just intensely loud the entire way home. The park was a 5-minute ride from my house, and when I got home, it was almost 9. I left my friend's house at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Case file number 1310, written by Random Headful, Marine's chilling night on guard duty. My son was a Marine stationed in the Middle East. They happened to be doing an exercise in Jordan with the Jordanian army and were camping out in the middle of the desert. One night, my son was on guard duty with another Marine, and near the end of his shift was sent back to camp to wake up the 2 guys whose turn it was. On the way back, which was about a mile, he started seeing black shadows out of his peripheral view, darting back and forth. Then he heard loud whispering in a language he couldn't understand. In the distance was a mountain range, which was in an unpopulated area, out in the middle of the desert. There are no cars or trucks or other vehicles. The only population nearby was a Bedouin tribe, but they didn't use motor vehicles. They traveled by camel. So that's why my son was really shocked to see lights in the distance. His logical mind tried to tell him that it was cars and trucks, but he knew that it couldn't be the case. The lights were also traveling in directions like straight up or straight down that a car couldn't do. Meanwhile, the dark shadows and whispers got worse. When he arrived at camp, he was absolutely fear-stricken. He woke the guys, then went to bed. The next morning, he asked the rest of the guys who had duty the night before if they'd seen or heard any of the stuff. They all had experienced it, the voices, the shadows, and lights. They were all terrified. So my son decided to make a Ouija board out of cardboard, and they asked it questions. At some point, the Ouija board told them, "Get out." So my son went out into the desert and buried it. The next morning, he woke up and the Ouija board was outside his tent. No one claimed it as a joke, and it was impossible anyway because no one saw where he buried it. To this day, he gets freaked out talking about it. He's not the type of person who believes in ghosts or such things, but after talking to guys in the Jordanian army, he's convinced they witnessed a jinn. Bonus file written by Anonymous, The Mysterious Woman by the River. When I was in high school, me and some friends went down to the river at night. We lived in a super rural area in the southeast, so we had the place to ourselves. It was just the 9 of us. We were also completely sober. We're all playing music and splashing around when we realized there was a 10th person in the water with us. She was a little farther out than us, but close enough that we could see that she was white with dark hair. If it wasn't for the fact that the only way to get to the spot we were in was to drive there, which we would have obviously seen, or by boat, none of us would have thought twice about seeing her. Some of my friends tried talking to her, but she didn't say anything, but made a motion for us to join her deeper in the water, which made us nope the hell out immediately. As soon as we were all on the shore, she went under the water and we didn't see her again. I'm still in touch with a couple of the people that were there, and it always comes up in conversation. To this day, when I visit family who's still in the area, seeing the river after dark gives me chills. Case file number 1311, written by IC0706, The Locked Deadbolt of Mysteries. I have 3 stories that really stand out to me, and as far as explainability, I can't explain any of them, but one is the winner as far as scaring the crap out of me. They all involve doors. In my teenage years, I lived in a townhome owned by my then stepdad, who freely admitted he thought the place was haunted. He was self-employed as a sound equipment installer and often would come and go during the day, and my mom worked 9 to 5 at a law firm. It was summer break, but I wasn't driving yet. I spent a lot of time outside, and this was before the time everyone had a cell phone, so I'd often take our cordless home phone outside with me. I went outside one day and realized I'd forgotten the phone. When I tried to go back inside to get it, the door was locked. Not the handle, which I may have written off as something I accidentally did on my way out, the deadbolt. The handle freely turned, but the deadbolt was engaged. The deadbolt that requires a key to lock from the outside, which I did not have. I stood there dumbfounded for a few minutes. Nobody else was home, and the only other entrance to the house was a set of sliding doors in the basement that were always locked. What the hell just happened? I kept trying to open it like an idiot for a while, before finally resigning myself to borrowing the neighbor's phone and calling my stepdad. He was in town, and after asking me if I was sure 1,000 times, came by to unlock the door. I'll never forget him saying, "Yep, the deadbolt was completely thrown. I can't explain that." I spent the rest of the day trying to recreate it, slamming the door over and over, trying to get the deadbolt to lock on its own, and it wouldn't happen. Second experience, same townhouse. I was now driving and often stayed late after school as I was in theater and had practices. This afternoon, I had about 30 minutes between class and practice and drove home to get a snack. When I got there, my mom was at work and my stepdad's van was gone, so I assumed he was gone as well. The door was locked. Now when you walk into this home, right in front of you, to the left is the kitchen, the right is my bedroom, and the middle has a staircase going downstairs. I unlocked the door, came inside, and turned into the kitchen with my back to the staircase. As I was making a sandwich, I heard someone downstairs. I turned back around and the staircase door was open, the stairwell light was on, and someone was clearly downstairs. At the time I thought, wasn't that door closed when I got here? But I also rationalized, because my stepdad's van was a cargo van, and it wasn't uncommon for someone to borrow it to haul things. So I assumed he was home, his van was borrowed, and I went to the top of the stairs. I stood there, looking down the stairs, eating my sandwich, and almost said something. It was almost out of my mouth, but something stopped me. I still don't know why I didn't yell, "Hi, Jay," down the stairs. Instead, I turned around and left, and I left the door unlocked because he was home, right? When I got back from practice, my mom was mad at me because Jay said he came home around 5 p.m. to an unlocked house. He had a lot of expensive equipment in the basement. I was always to lock the door. I tried telling her what I'd seen. He was home at 4. She said he most definitely was not, and she never did believe me. The third experience. I lived in a crappy trailer in my early 20s when I was poor with 2 young kids. It had 2 bedrooms, which I'd given to the kids, and I slept on the couch in the living room, which was an indirect line of sight to the front door. I put the kids to bed around 9 p.m., and I always locked the door, always. I still to this day clearly remember locking both the handle and deadbolt, and checking to make sure it was fully locked before taking a shower. Eventually I fell asleep. I woke up suddenly around 3 a.m. on high alert. As my eyes cleared and I started thinking sensibly, I realized I was staring into the street. My front door was wide open. Not like it's a little open or cracked, or I didn't quite close it all the way and a strong wind came along. It was fully open, like a 90-degree angle here. Plus, I had a glass storm door that was fully closed and latched, blocking any wind we might have had, which we didn't have any anyways. I got up and walked to the door to close it, and that's when I lost my crap. Y'all, the deadbolt was still in the locked position. It was fully turned to lock, sticking out into the living room air for God and everyone to see. Have you ever had those moments where you swear there's ice in your veins? That was it for me. I've never been scared like that in my life. In a closed door, you can't even turn the deadbolt to fully locked without it being lined up on the door jamb properly. I knew I'd locked that door, and yet here it was staring me in the face. I didn't sleep without the lights on for a week. Creepy file number 124, written by Aaron Yaffe, a thrilling tale of man versus wild. I got home in the evening while living in rural Pennsylvania and had to shoo some cats away from my trash cans. 30 minutes later, I hear rustling in the trash cans. I run out the front door annoyed, turn the corner to the cans, and I'm face to face with an enormous black bear. I yell, "Yeah!" at the top of my lungs, and that bear bolts up a tree in a blink faster than I would have thought possible for something that big. So I'm marveling at the speed, staring at the bear, which I'm now aware is a terrible move. And the bear is staring at me like, "You're not as big as I thought. I'm pretty sure I can murder you." He shuffles back down the tree, reaffirms, "Yeah, I can definitely murder you." So I start backing up, while making myself as big as possible, and give him a non-verbal, "You sure about that, bro?" While the bear was pondering that, I scoot back inside, and go get my gun. Then I remember I don't have a gun, so I grab a handful of silverware, head to the second-story deck, and start chucking it at the bear who is back at the trash cans. A fork connects with his head, pointy end. He gives a screw you swipe with his paw, knocking over both of the trash cans. Then he lumbers off into the woods. The only slightly strange part is a week later, 60 miles away from my house, a Rutgers University student is killed by a black bear. Couldn't help but wondering if it was the same bear, still pissed off about getting hit with that fork. Case file number 1312, written by Insane Fox 32. The Positive Power of Memories. When I was a kid, I used to have a pure white Labrador named Elkie. Had her since she was a small nugget. I say she was pure white, but she had a little black spot near her tush. If it wasn't for that spot and her purple collar, she would just disappear in the snow. She was a big girl, and I used to ride her around like a horse. I was a small kid, so don't worry. She also knew places around the house and would take me there if I had asked her, like, "Elkie, kitchen please." She was the goodest girl. Anyways, we had to move to a different state, and the place we were moving to wouldn't allow pets, so Elkie had to stay behind. I missed her so much it hurt. As I got more comfortable, I found out she unfortunately passed away around March 14th that year. 4 months later, My dad was making a service call to someone's apartment, and there, this lady had a puppy she had just gotten. She was only 4 months old. She was a pure white Labrador with a tiny black spot on her tush. When my dad entered the apartment, the puppy started going nuts. Lady told my dad not to worry. She didn't like strangers all that much and she'll calm down. Except she wasn't barking because she was afraid or wary. She was barking because she was excited. When my dad sat on the floor, the puppy would sit exactly how Elkie used to sit and lay her head on his lap, howl how she used to howl, do things she used to do. The lady was stunned because she never taught the puppy much of anything like what she was doing. She also just didn't like being around new people apparently. My dad told her, "I might sound crazy, but I think this is my old dog." In a joking manner, of course. He didn't think too much of it. But after his work, he was done and was leaving. The puppy started whining and crying, biting his pant leg, trying to keep him from going. My dad got sad. He told me if he could, he would have offered to buy that dog off her right then and there, but we couldn't. And he kept walking towards his van, and he told me hearing her cry and scratching the door the way she did hurt him so much, too much. I'm crying just writing this out. I didn't know what to make of this as a kid. Still don't as an adult. Maybe she did manage to come back as a new puppy, and I could only hope that family loved her as much as I did. I miss you, girl. Bonus file written by Griffins, The Home Alone Horror. Just as a little background, I was about 12. My parents were on some trip at the time with my sister, and my youngest sibling was spending the night with my aunt. I was asleep when I woke up at around 3 a.m. to the sound of a loud bang in the kitchen. We had 2 cats, so I thought it was a chunkier of the 2 jumping down from the counter. That was until I rolled over anyways, seeing both of the cats cuddled up on the bed. I, being the kind of person who would die first in a horror movie, got out of bed. As I got to the door, one of the lights in the hallway turned on. I brushed it off thinking my youngest sibling had come home in the middle of the night from my aunt's, which wasn't uncommon when they stayed over there. When I got to the hall though, the bathroom door was wide open. I peeked into my siblings' room and didn't see them. I thought that maybe I was just seeing things, that maybe the light had been on the whole time. So deciding to investigate the noise, I crept downstairs, doing the careful step over that one creaky stair that I'm pretty sure everyone had. When I got downstairs, all the lights were on, which was strange because I knew I had turned them off. Mom had been snapping at us kids about it recently. I slowly walked through the living room, then the dining room, then the kitchen, until I was back in the hallway, making sure no one was there and turning off the lights. When I glanced down the hall, I noticed the basement door was closed, which was strange because the litter box was down there, so it always stayed open. I opened the door to see all the basement lights were on. This made me really uneasy because I know for a fact I didn't turn these on. I never went in the basement when I was home alone. I hated it down there for a number of reasons. That's a story for another time. So I did what any logical idiot would do and grabbed a chef's knife from the kitchen before going downstairs to investigate. I walked around the basement and no one was there. So again, I turned the lights off and left, heading back upstairs. Just as I started to walk down the first floor hall to go back to bed, I heard what sounded like a little girl's voice say my name. I froze, and I honestly probably peed a little. It was loud and clear, yet still somehow sounded far away. I noped the hell out of there, ran up to my room, put my knife in my nightstand and hid under the covers. I stayed awake listening, and eventually scrambled to find my phone and text my parents asking when they'd be back. They didn't answer, probably because it was the butt crack of dawn, and stayed hiding under the covers, clinging to my phone and trying my hardest to stay awake. Eventually I fell asleep, and was woken up a while after by my mom asking if I was okay and that my text had scared her and my dad. I said I was just tired and she left. I've tried really hard to reason this with myself, but I can't. I honestly don't think about it if I can avoid it, but it's one of those things that replays in my head when I can't sleep. Case notes for file 1307. A mother's celestial instinct. I really connect with this story especially because I think this happened with my mom too. Or was it my dad? All I know is we were driving. One of my parents, I don't remember which one, I think it was my mom, but anyways. We were supposed to take a certain road and we didn't. We ended up taking a different one that was longer. Yeah, it was my mom, because my dad was asking her, why are you doing? It's going to take, an extra 15 minutes to get home. And in the road that we would have normally taken, there was a big accident. Now, I don't know if we would have been in the accident. We only learned about it the next day. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much information is baked into our gut, in our instincts, that we often ignore. Now, it's not always as devastating as this, but my God, it's really incredible. Listen to your brain and the signals it's sending your conscious. Even if they're not always very clear, trust your emotions. They generally know what the hell's going on, more than you do consciously. Okay, so on for the bonus file. Close call with a hellhound. There aren't many wild dogs or animals in the area I live in, which is nice. But yeah, when you're really rural, in a very, out there area, you get to have less people around, which in some ways is a good thing, especially just where you live. I like being around some people, but where I live, I want to be as far away as possible. But then you get beasts like this sometimes. Now, do I think it was an actual hellhound? Probably not. It does make you wonder, though, are there actual beasts sent by the devil or the afterlife that come to possess a soul? I don't think they would be in the form of a hellhound, though. I think that's an embellishment of reality. But really, all it comes down to is being alert. If it's supernatural or not, we're not defenseless. Clearly, as long as you pay attention, you can protect yourself. So, pay attention. Now, time for the quote of the day. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place. And I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you're hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Rocky Balboa. When you're rewatching those movies and those montages come out, the training montages, my God, you just feel like you could lift 1,000,000 tons after that, right? You want to go for a run, and of course, that motivation doesn't last. Because that's the point. It's not about motivation. Motivation can be a good catalyst. It can get maybe it's like the ember, the spark that ignites the flame, but you have to be the flame. It's all internal. It's discipline. If you've been putting something off, maybe watch a good movie like Rocky Balboa to get you motivated, to get you started. But to keep going, that's all you. That's your flame. Nothing else is going to keep you going besides you. So get hit by life, say thank you, and keep going forward. Case file number 1308, the Eerie Tall Man. Okay, so very clearly, there are entities and beasts out there, even people, humanoid creatures, that are extremely terrifying. And I think it's clear from so many stories I've read that these entities are not isolated to this universe. I think if you think about it, we have multiversal crossovers all the time. We don't know why. Maybe space-time portals or something, so in any given location they're more prone. But the exact reason, we can't detect these space-time portals until we enter one. And we don't detect it besides being in a different place. It's not a one-way trip. It's not like this is the original universe, the one we're in now, and everything flows out from it. No. Things can come into this universe too. And if there's a Googleplex of nearly infinite other variations of universes, everything that could possibly happen has happened in a different universe. The dominoes flow differently from each different event. Well, who's to say what's out there in those other universes that could infiltrate here? I think this could be a relation to Bigfoot, maybe even aliens. Maybe there are no aliens in this universe here, but in other universes there are. That could explain why they just blip out of existence. Maybe they're even able to willfully travel between multiverses. I don't know about that. Maybe it's never something we can control, but just to say, this eerie tall man, I think really was there. And then he wasn't, because he just went back home. Maybe that's even more terrifying, isn't it? Case notes for the bonus file. My dog detected something beyond our world. So similar to the other story, there are creatures around that probably aren't even from this universe, but from a different one that's trillions of quadrillions of light years away beyond the universe's void between the multiverses. There could be entities that are over there. And of course, via these portals that connect us, they could be here instantly. And I think animals have a very keen sense of this. Maybe dogs get a good sense of smell, because the portal opens first, and there are still molecules traversing it, I imagine. Like the atmosphere, the air would still flow between it. Whatever is in that place would be instantly detectable to dogs that have extremely heightened sense of the smell. So I think that's what it was detecting. Above where you were, maybe inside the actual roof, the ceiling, in the space between the floors, there could have been a portal there, and your dog was detecting that. Whatever was there didn't come through, thankfully, and I think that's probably the case. Most of the time, nothing does come through, because you can't know it's there, so it's not like you can just... It's not like the Portal game, where there's portals that open up and there's a giant blue glow. There was only one instance, one story, of a person or a couple that was in New Orleans, and they saw an actual active portal. My guess is you only see them when they're very unstable and just about to close anyways. That's just a hypothesis, but I think it makes sense because in that story, it vanished very quickly. So I think in the cases where they're stable, you don't see anything. There's no energy being emitted from it because it's stable. So that'd be my guess. It would be something like that. Maybe just a spirit, but I think there's a lot of multiverse crossovers going on. Sometimes nothing comes through, but the whiff is still detectable by animals. Could explain why they freak out so much. Cats too. Okay, so that's for the bonus file. Postcards and Poltergeists. Yeah, well, in this case, because there's actual mass being moved around from an invisible force, I don't think it's a portal, or at least nothing came through in that instant. I think it is probably just a spirit. Poltergeist, maybe. Poltergeist would be more prone to, maybe harm is the wrong word, just mischievous activity. But it can translate to more negative events. In this case, just moving around a stand that held postcards. Nothing too evil about that, although still disturbing, and I would have run away. I keep wondering, if anything like this happens to me, like right now I'm recording, what if the light bulb goes out or flickers and then comes back on? Or what if my chair levitates that's to the side? I sit on a different one, just so it doesn't block out the green screen behind me anyways. What if my computer started levitating or something like that? Or I hear a whisper or something along those lines that's really supernatural and creepy? What if it happened to me? How would I react? After reading all these stories, I would still be freaked out. So imagine people that don't read these stories or know anything about this and it happens to them. They would be peeing their pants, and I can't blame them. Can you? And now time for the quote of the day. Life is not the amount of breaths you take. It's the moments that take your breath away. Hitch. That's a very good movie, I have to say. I like that. I like how positive the movie was, and, it reflects on how dating today is, this was still like a decade ago. I don't know how old this movie is, actually. Anyways, it's about a man that is very charismatic. It's Will Smith playing the lead character. Anyways, he goes around helping people find dates and attract women and, actually form long-term relationships. Of course, it can be difficult, I think, especially even these days. With online dating, it's an entirely different dynamic. Most people don't approach people in real life anymore. It can be hard to find a good place, like in the grocery store. Where else would I go, right? But to the quote itself, if we're alive and we're just in a room, doing nothing, with nothing to do, nothing to think about, nothing to experience, what's the point? That would be torture. If hell even exists, that could just be hell. Being conscious in a room with absolutely nothing to do or experience. You're alive. For life to have value, we have to have experiences. Not always new, but generally you want to have novel experiences and with other people. I've been contemplating just how important that is, even as an introvert. I've been watching a lot of reaction content. What's amazing is how I can rewatch things I've seen like 10 times and still enjoy it just because someone else is watching and reacting to it as well. Like the Harry Potter movies. I've seen them so many times and I have a ritual of rewatching them in October. But at this point, I've seen them so many times that I still get some magic from it, but so much more just by having someone else there. If you have someone new in your life, just experience things with them. Everything is better with friends, as they say. It really is true. Case notes of file 1309. The terrifying storm that warped time. We have space-time portals, and those seem stable and contained. But if you're going to affect time, you need a ton of energy. Could an actual thunderstorm, lightning storm, generate enough energy to warp time? Well, in this story, apparently yes. But why only you? Did anyone else report the same thing? And you passed out and literally were in the rain. You were so out of it, conked out, to such an extent that you actually remained unconscious in the rain, in the freezing cold superstorm for, hours? And it's not like you suffered from anything else long-term affecting you if you're knocked out for that extended time. Makes me wonder. It's not like you were hit by a lightning bolt, or maybe you were. Can that knock you out? I think it does. People pass out from that, although you would have evidence, right, on your... Maybe you were grazed by it, so your clothes wouldn't be singed or anything. People report like if they're hit by lightning directly, even their hairs are singed, everywhere on their body and their hair. I mean, it makes sense. It's lightning. It's a lot of electricity and energy and heat. So what if being hit or struck nearby by lightning or directly by it could actually create enough energy to rip apart space-time? Maybe that's why we feel so charged and concerned. Whenever a lightning storm is around, I cannot be outside. I can't do it. I love rain. That's fine. But if I see a bolt of lightning in the sky, even though there's no thunder, so it's pretty far away, I'm just booking back inside, even if I'm on a walk. Just pace in my room instead. Even though the odds of it impacting me directly are so low. There's something about it, right? I'm sure other people feel the same way. Maybe there is some kind of charge in lightning that is strong enough to even distort time itself. That's a thought. Okay, so it's file 1310. A Marine's chilling night on guard duty. Yeah, the jinn, maybe. That would be a local thought. Yeah, they're not genies. They don't just grant you wish and emerge from a lamp or anything like that. No. Could be an association with aliens, because of course the lights in the sky definitely make me think about aliens. But then the whispers, that's a new one, not associated with aliens at all. So if aliens exist, I think they can be confused. For orbs in the sky, we have orbs that are probably spiritual, is my guess. Ball lightning, as it's referred to. And those could move fast, although generally they move slowly. But if there's enough concentration, maybe they have enough energy to zip around very quickly. And then they'd be blue light, which most headlights now are blue light, so you could easily confuse it for thinking it would be a car or truck. Even though, as you say, it can't be. In that area, they're not around. The other possibility, though, is that aliens are known to connect directly with the mind. Now, my theory is that some minds maybe have a defense mechanism built in, and they reject it. So instead of interfacing directly with the alien, telepathically, your mind is producing all these kind of weird uncertainties like the whispers and shadows that you see. The lights probably already were there if this is aliens, but the interface connection wasn't correct. It's like when you try to connect via Bluetooth to your phone, sometimes it doesn't connect properly. And if you try to listen to songs with it, the audio is all distorted. Or maybe one ear isn't connected properly. So something like that. If there's a telepathic link, it has to be formed first, forged, connected to. And I think some brains probably resist this. Which makes sense. That'd be a good defense mechanism. If it's an unsavory connection. Okay, so to the bonus file. The Mysterious Woman by the River. Kinda sounds like a siren or a mermaid. One of those creatures that is in water, bodies of water, and wants to pull you down with them. But do those really exist? Maybe not in this universe. So everyone saw her. She had to be materialized enough to be real. I don't think it was a spirit that did this. And it couldn't be, right? Because the spirit would be in the water, and you would see the ripples of water around her as she moved around. If she was a spirit, there would be no rippling. So no, this was a real person. Now, it could also just be a pretty strange girl that just walked to the river and was, I don't know, maybe not even pranking, just wanting to form like a connection. Could have mermaids or very strange women. Now time for the quote of the day. I'm a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more of it I have. Thomas Jefferson. So what is the definition of luck? Because a lot of people say luck doesn't exist, but that's not right. It's just about understanding what luck even means. Luck is simply things that are out of our control or unpredictable. So what would you say luck is? If you flip a coin, technically, if you knew the exact amount of energy imparted into the coin and the air density in the room, you could predict with 100% certainty how the coin would land, which head would be head or tails. But of course, we don't have access to that information, so it's unknowable. Completely unknowable. Anything randomized is just unknowable information, but that's luck. Luck isn't some random arbitrary decision by some, god or anything, or at least to our extent that we know it's not. It's just the absence of information, or uncontrollable factors. And those exist, but here's the great thing. Luck has a way of evening out over long periods of time. For instance, technically, If you flip a coin, you could get heads or tails 50 times in a row. That's real luck. People think of that as a pattern, but not really. Luck is just entirely random. But over time, if you flip a coin 50 times, it could be heads 50 times in a row. But if you do it 1,000,000 times, the odds that it'd be 1,000,000 times in a row would be statistically zero. The more you play the game of life, and the more you actively participate in it, instead of letting it happen to you, even though you may get streaks of really bad luck, it does happen. No one's discounting that. Over the stretch of a lifetime, of years and decades, you can make good things happen just by continuously stepping on the pedal and never letting up. Still, try to stay within the speed limit. Caissons of File 1311, The Locked Deadbolt Mysteries. Well, it's the last experience that to me resonates the most, because as you say, the deadbolt was still in the locked position, even though the door was open. So somehow, something managed to take the matter from the bolt itself out of phase, so it could phase through the door and it could just be pushed open. And there is no other possibility. Even if someone had the key, as you mentioned, you can't actually lock the deadbolt unless it's in proper place to position inside the door. So even with a key, you couldn't relock it. So something took the actual mass, the metal of the bolt, out of phase. What could do that? Could a spirit take it out of phase? Like bring it into their realm temporarily? Maybe. Caissons for the Creepy File number 124. A thrilling tale of man versus wild. It is incredible, isn't it, how everything is interconnected. Even when it's not mystical or supernatural or glitchy in any way, it's just you pissed off a bear, and then the bear probably was the same bear, I would guess. Bears can travel quite quickly, as you experienced, so miles and miles within a week, yeah. It's very sad for the student that died, but it does make you wonder, doesn't it? How much our actions have an effect, and the problem is it's unknowable, right? There's no way to test this, to go back in time and see, well, don't throw the fork and see if the student still dies. Is that actually the cause? Maybe. But I think the takeaway from this is always be considerate. Act like your actions do matter, because they do. Even though it's not always seen, your actions make a difference, good or bad. And now time for the quote of the day. You can't handle the truth. A Few Good Men. One of the better Tom Cruise movies. And of course, Jack Nicholson delivers the line spectacularly. Of course, in the context of the movie, it's more specific to have this monster, if you will, that is willing to defend good people by being a monster. There's a certain sacrifice in that is commendable, but I think it's the wrong mindset. I don't think we need monsters in the world to defend against other monsters. And good people defending against evil are not monsters, even if violence is sometimes necessary. So we can handle the truth if the truth is moral. Just not always easy to live in a moral world. All we can do for that front is to live by example. Be a good person. And then the truth will be easily handled. Caissons File 1312. The Positive Power of Memories. I love the idea of reincarnation. And it makes sense. We're dealing with souls here. And by soul, it's simply the active energy that empowers or animates the physical body, the physical mass, because otherwise it's just atoms, molecules. There's no life in that, not in the sentient form that we experience, the free will enabling energy. That's the soul. So if the soul can move universes, well, who's to say that maybe we get a choice. Maybe we can just re-emerge in the same universe and reincarnate it in a similar form, or even in a different form. And yes, I do believe that animals have souls. So your pet, your favorite pet, in this case, the pure white Elkie, she just wanted to come back. And maybe there isn't always like a specific choice of exactly where, but maybe there was the option of coming back in a way where at least she could interact once more with the old family. And obviously she remembered it. That's another question, how much of the memory of an old life do we really retain? How much can we retain? People talk about past memories of other lives, going back centuries or more. It's probably true. Maybe the further back you go, the more muted the memory is, harder to really bring along. Genetic memory, soul memory, I guess it works similarly. Caissons for the bonus file, the Home Alone horror. I would attribute this to a classic spirit, or you have spirits that just interact with the EM spectrum, can easily activate light switches without even having to flip the switch. You just bridge the connection internally where the switch is what actually bridges the connection normally. Maybe they do actually flip the switches, but I think even easier is just bridging the connection via the soul energy, you could say. Now, did they want to terrify you, or was it just lonely? Or even just training? You can imagine that, like a training montage for spirits, like Bobby in Supernatural, where he becomes a spirit, but you're not just gifted the knowledge of how to interact with the physical world, still you have to learn it and train yourself for it. And for that, maybe you need a Rocky montage. So all these spirits we think are trying to terrify us are just training themselves. An interesting concept. And now time for the quote of the day. Every man dies, but not every man really lives. William Wallace. So I've been thinking about this a bit. What does it mean to really live? I think the best summary I can come up with is to have an experience or multiple experiences that, if you're on your deathbed and thinking back to it, you can say, I lived a good life. This life was worth living for those moments. Do you have any memories like that? To that extent, that potency yet? I don't think I do. So I'm definitely not ready to go yet. Probably won't be for a few centuries, maybe a few thousand years. We'll see. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.